Oh.
Nicole.
Oh, same name. Oh, Nicole.
Scott.
Catherine. Nicole.
Khoren.
Debbie. Okay. I'm going to set a timer for 35 minutes. Okay. So, do you guys just want to like all the discussion questions?
Yeah.
I don't know how loud I'm supposed to talk to like.
I don't even have a book.
We can share. Okay. Does everyone have the discussion questions or should I just
I don't know how they're here. I guess you can read it.
Okay. It says, according to the article, The Five Sexes Revisited by Anne Foster Sterling, why is a two-sex system embedded in our society not adequate to have a full spectrum of human
I feel like that just kind of addresses the entire arena as a whole because it's all about asexuality. And so having just male and female doesn't give the fluidity to sexes that is necessary. Yeah.
It's on the spectrum, it's a binary. Instead,
It's very exclusive. It neglects like any of the sex that's not male and female. By everybody is on male.
So we're supposed to, like, this is like a opinion question? Like, what's this like?
I think it can be based on knowledge upon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And say,
I was like in the book, and I was like, oh, it's right there. There's the answer to that. It's just a matter of that. Okay.
I think it was your own interpretation.
Yeah.
Well, then I was thinking about the five-sex system, which, in addition to males and females, was terms for hermaphrodites, male, pseudo, hermaphrodites, and female, pseudo.
Yeah. Like biologically, there's more than just two sexes too. Like you have your XXY, XYY, which is very common. And then we have like just an X or just sometimes a Y, which is good.
according to the article, Five Sexes Revisited, the author writes, in the idealized platonic biological world, human beings are divided into two kinds, a perfectly dimorphic species. The idealized story papers over many obvious caveats. What specifically are these caveats? In what ways, specific examples from the text, does absolute dimorphism disintegrate even at the basic level of biology?
Oh, that's kind of what I was just saying. It's the whole XY thing, how males are XY, females are XX. But like traditionally, but then you have your blur, I guess, the in between, the blurred line part. That's a superficial line, not a real clear line.
Yeah, that's what I said. The second part was talking about that absolute dimorphism disintegrates even at the basic biology, which is like chromosomes, hormones, internal sex structure, the gonads, external genitalia, all vary more than most people realize, and that those born outside of the platonic dimorphic mold are called intersexual.
Yeah. The only reason it's really ideal is because it's easier for us to understand. So I think that goes back to the whole like society constructed ideas of needing a binary system.
Which is like women have facial hair, like some women have facial hair, and like some men don't.
Number 3, according to the article, the same article, how have intersex babies been treated since 1950s, i.e. the John Money model? Did these doctors working under John Money believe that both sex and gender were masculine? I think it said that, like, basically Money decided that the doctor can choose. The sex and just decided to tell the parents, hey, since we made her a girl, now she's a girl. But then later on, right, you might, she might identify as a male or a female, but their, like, organs might not match up. And then I think it said that, like, gender dysmorphia or something like that. Yeah, just a lot of things. And then so if they, like, they feel this way, but if society doesn't embrace them, and they think something's wrong with them when, in the beginning, it was the doctor's fault. They didn't.
They said to stay away from words like intersex and hermaphrodite. It's like, oh, you have this, you are this. So they tell parents.
And it gives examples of people who had that surgery done when they were a child, invasive. It's very invasive surgery. And then when they changed back to whatever it was they wanted to do originally, you have to go through that invasive surgery again. And so it's just redoing a process that shouldn't have been done to begin with.
Should have been their choice to begin with. Basically, wait until they were mature enough to make that strong decision.
I feel like there's some doctors that'll just do the decision for you.
I think they do, because I know like with certain doctors, like when I know like on the male side, like when they're born and if they have a penis, then they decide to circumcise them sometimes without asking the parents for their consent. So, I mean,
There's one doctor, and I don't know if it was like a fake article or not.
I mean, I'm judging.
Yeah, like, I don't know if it was like a fake article or not, but there's one doctor who was checked on, he was like, it's easier to dig a hole or dig a hole than build a hole. That is. I know.
Yeah.
It's kind of graphic.
Right?
Yeah, and then like in the article they talk about like John, but then like they accidentally, I think during the circumcision process, they like cut off the penis, and so they were like, okay, well now you can be Joan, and then like apparently Joan liked wearing dresses, and so Bunny was like, yes, it's a success, I'm a genius, but then later apparently Joan, whose name is now like David Reamer, rejected his female assignment. So it wasn't a success, but like they didn't follow up with Joe, David. So yeah, it's terrible.
It kind of that would like cause a lot of psychological things later on in life. You know, like you said, like they're not accepted because you see them as one gender when they're walking around identifying others.
It's like they rush to try to sign the baby, like before they morally think about okay, how can this affect if they grow up or not. It's just like I need to get parents a boy or a girl. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't like in our society we don't really talk about like intersex people, and so like let's say you feel this way, but you never ever hear about intersex people your whole life, then you think you're like some mutant,
Right.
and like you're weird, like whatever. But in reality, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just no one tells you that there's nothing wrong with you, so you think. And like you said, like psychologically, you get really messed up.
It's kind of like the whole gay thing, and how it's now acceptable when it wasn't just 20 years ago. So,
That's what happened. Now it's like the name is like
BTQI. Yeah, you're
Like
totally
there's
right.
so many more.
There's like bisexual.
Well, it's good for like, intersexual people to just be like,
I think they're like that. Yeah, it's good. Come with me now.
I feel like actually intersex is more common than albinism. Yeah, I didn't know that. And I thought that was.
oh yeah, it was in chapter 1.
Yeah, like,
Wow, mind blown.
statistic or ratio?
It was like 0.7.
I don't remember where.
It was like a chapter that
Yeah,
or something.
It was not that that's important. I just-
Oh yeah, the other book. Yeah, the other book, chapter 1.
Yeah, it was like 0.7. Yeah, something like that. Like 1 out of 1,000 or something like that. But it
I
was,
think it's 1 out of 10.
yeah, it was like it's more common than albinism. So it was like the chapter was like you can be walking into someone who's in the test and you'll never know. That's great. Okay.
Really neat because when you see like albino people like around campus and stuff, it's like statistically.
There they are.
Like,
You can see them.
but and that's more acceptable to talk about too, even though it's really more rare.
Yeah. That's really nice.
Okay, according to this article again, the revelation of cases of failed assignments under the John Money model led some in the medical community to re-examine the wisdom of early genital surgery. What is the prevailing view among doctors today? Note that there are competing views, the Victorian model and the more progressive model pioneered by Lawrence Nicole. In what cases should sex reassignments be performed or avoided?
So we're saying which doctor, or wait, what was it?
So, yeah, so like before there was like the John Money, which he basically said the doctors can choose and like can assign a gender. What's his name? Lawrence McCall, he was like, he created this ethical model where you should only perform surgery, I think, when it's like life-threatening or it will better their life in some way. And then you can assign a gender, but with the notion that the child can like later grow up and change, and also tell the parents like, hey, your child is intersex. This is what you can do to like help them. Or something.
And I think it proposed the idea to that they should focus on therapy instead of biological change for the child.
Should just like they should. I feel like they should just educate about this controversy.
Yeah. Yeah.
In what cases should sex reassignments be performed or avoided? So, I mean, I guess almost in all instances, unless that person.
Or if they decide, hey, like, I want to this, but then they're like, why would you just automatically just do it for them?
Yeah.
You know?
But like when they decide to be engaged, you know, you're deciding at their age, I think. Like, I mean, how do you know that they're ready to make this?
This documentary is about there's a little girl, but she like identified as male, and so they start on children on like hormones. That way, like if a female, it prevents her from menstruating, prevents like the growth of her breasts and stuff. But it can all be reversed until she's of an older age, where they make sure that that is like exactly what she wants, not just like the phase that she's going through. So they have different like procedures they go through to help the child feel more comfortable without doing something permanent in case the child is changing or something, which I think is really neat.
At least they're like, yeah, at least they have multiple routes to take, you know, instead of just
Like automatically,
yeah,
jumping in.
decide this for you.
I think that's why it's important to like educate like
Right.
them, but also like the parents. So it's not like they think that they have to suddenly like go with surgery, but it's like they can wait and take like more baths and wait until you know for sure. I think like as a person, you would know yourself for sure. Not like who you identify as.
Right.
Everything is so gendered. Like walking to Toys R Us, like you'll see, like everything is just so gendered. Like it blows. Like, I mean, just starting for everything. So it's like, you know, even like picking, I guess the intersex, like picking that one, it's like still like gender, and like, you know, and then like parents would have like another like intent, like, oh no, you want this, I know you do, and then I know you really do, and then
Or you're just like you're saying, you feel like you need to follow what your parents are paving for you, the path that your parents are giving.
it's not their fault because everything's just so gendered.
Yeah.
Like
Or
every
even
color.
just like society itself. Because I saw this picture, like this dad gave, because he was like trying to go against like gender roles, and so he gave his daughter like a truck to play with, but then instead of playing with it like the trucks and the cars, he like puts this like makes it like a bed for their Barbies and stuff. So it's like the parents might try to like not assign gender roles, but the child might go to school or like watch TV, whatever, and still you know like be influenced by that and think, oh, I have to be this way. Yeah.
There's like aspects of religion too, like some like denominations, like everything can be really strict when it comes to different gender roles and like what to do. So you can imagine like being in a very strict religion and trying to jump out of the gender role, like because that's going against not just your parents, but like this faith that is kind of ingrained in you for so long. And imagine that being really hard, especially when you get to choose your gender to begin with. It's someone else.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. According to this article, how does the case of Max Beck inform us about the fluidity of sex, gender, and sexuality? How does this case illustrate that sex assignment at birth is only the beginning of a very long journey?
Okay, I started reading with this part because my sister had done the surgery, and she was like, I want sleep. I had to make sleep from scratch for her, so I had to stop reading.
Intersexual. And he was surgically assigned to female.
Yeah.
They were surgically assigned to female. She was raised like that, and now within a few years, she's like a perfectionist.
And then she got her man.
Yes.
You're right.
Yeah.
So it's like super confusing.
Yeah.
Like I'm confused. Can you imagine like how this must be like?
Like experiencing it for years of your life, not understanding or knowing what you are, or how you like how to feel about yourself.
And it's really, sorry, it's say it's really neat to see like he progressed to find out who he is and like who he wants to be through this process. Because it was like started as a woman, then became a lesbian, and then became a man. So it's like he slowly progressed to getting where he wanted to be, and it's kind of neat, but it's sad that he had to go like that really long route to get there.
He said that a medical team followed her, and if they had followed her, they would have thought it was a success just because she married to a man, which shows that you haven't really dove in to see how she is personally. You're just looking from the outside, and the fact that she's heavily sexually.
I think that's how any medical profession is, though. Like, it's always looking from the outside in and never really putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about the person as a person.
And you're already biased when you're looking at it from that perspective anyway, because you want to be successful in what you did, so it's, you're always going to like be hoping for it to twist around to somehow benefit you.
There's always like these like weird like tattoos and stuff like people put in with like like if a female wants to turn male, like there's just like this like huge thing about that, or like vice versa. Like if a male wants to turn into female, then like I was watching like it was a lot of television. I was watching like True Life, and it was like that. Like this girl, she was like finally like told her boyfriend like I was born a man, and like they like almost punched her in the face. And I was like, people just make it so unacceptable and like switch from that to that. And I'm like,
that's why people need to be educated. So this is
I know, and I'm just like, in a way, like I was like, go True Life for putting that out there, but at the same time, it's like, wow, you punch in the face.
It's really
like
frustrating to watch. That's such a big deal. To come out to someone like that, because it doesn't really change who you are. Just more and more penis. I'm sorry.
Somebody probably put that there for all I know. Like, like.
Moving on.
I've been watching television episodes, I promise.
Yet.
Okay, number 6. According to this article, with a world where the variability of gender is so visible, why do you think that medical institutions and the public is so resistant to ideas of gender and sex diversity? Or why are we reluctant to move away from the fictional and idealized version of two diametrically opposed sexes? Why do we tend to flatten out gender diversity rather than expand it?
Because we're scared of it, honestly. It's like the fear of being men. And, like, we're still living in the primitive era of that ideology, So we're still stuck on, like, pre-World War I. The idea is that the female stays in the house, the male decides to go work and make money. When it's not all that anymore. Like, this world is much bigger than that.
Like the patriarchal society.
Yeah.
And I think, to get back to religion, I grew up around the Bible.
Right.
It's all Christian all the time. But it says like God created man and woman. Like man, two very distinct sexes. And so it's kind of like, if he didn't want that, then he would have included that in the Bible. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't agree, but like that's definitely a very strong part of it, because our country being based on Christianity, white male patriarch, the Christian influence in it. So it's all just this big mess that we're still trying to escape from.
So yeah, maybe it is religion that's just kind of holding us back. That tie to religion, I should say.
Well, none of that.
Like what you were saying, if you created man and woman, that's all we know.
Right.
So.
But I wonder if that's like Western. Because like I'm Hindu, and like in India, like we accept genders, which is the intersex, like transgendered, hermaphrodites. Like they're like in India, like in Hinduism, like they even have it in like our book and our scriptures and everything. That it goes back to like they're the super blessed. So like you don't want them to like push you. Like they just like walk around the street, like they can come into somebody's wedding and just like feed them and get their blessings, and like they're like welcome to everything, and they just like come to every party and they like give gifts. It's like this entire thing. So it's like you don't want to ever like cross one because they like curse you. And it's like, and we're like really superstitious in India. So it's like if you get cursed by like a teacher, then it's like game over. But that's why you should bless them. Like you're supposed to feed them and get their blessings and stuff. So it's like a completely different. It's like you're.
Yeah, and I had an idea that it was partially America. Like I know it is America's views, and that's why the rest of the world is like the way it is.
Right.
Because they're trying to follow the police nation of the world, So.
I think it's like mainly about like domination and who's like in because like who's in power is white, Protestant, heterosexual men, and so if you're anything other than that, you're the other. And so of course, if you're not heterosexual, then you're messed up in like this like dichotomous society. And so, and like you said, people are scared, and others, if you like, they think if you give them power, they'll like take over the world. And so, just having like a dichotomous male-female, it's a way to not give power and not accept it, and to just say they're the others, they're the people who are deviant and wrong, and we're the good ones. So everyone should be like us.
They relate everything to a good and a bad. I mean, yeah, I agree. There is a good, and for every good thing, there is a bad. But
there's a huge gray area that should be more welcoming to things that don't fall. Yeah.
I don't even know if it's like even fair to put the good and bad when it comes to like things like gender and race. Like, I mean, they're all socially constructed to begin with.
Your opinion.
Right.
Or not opinion, but personal. Like you can't. Nobody else can experience what you experience because they're not you.
Even if you do look at like it has two separate groups, like everything within each group is going to experience something differently as who they are. And so it's like you're trying to make these two little pie charts. This is just not working because of how different everybody is.
And especially like with that, like thinking about how we have our American society and she has her Indian society. And like how there's different like environmental factors that influence our opinion, I guess, or people's opinion, should I say.
Like everybody has a separate culture, faith,
so it changes how we perceive it, I guess.
It's a pretty good idea.
It's crazy how like everybody thinks Americans so far gone, so just progressing so much, that everybody else is accepting these types of situations and just stuff like you can't.
And my cousin's saying I'm like so lucky because I can live here, and I'm like, nah, bro. You want to stay there, you do.
I think instead of like accepting, we just kind of don't talk about it. It's like, okay, you're there, but yeah, it's happening, but we don't talk about it. Yeah, we don't talk about it. It's like, we talk about all this good stuff, but not that, like, that doesn't exist, but it does, but like...
But we talk about obesity like it's nobody's business, right?
The whole
like,
fear and ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
We talk about things that will give power to those who are in power, basically. So, of course, like, if, let's say, like, a bunch of white heterosexual men were being abused, like, there will be outrage, But if it was anyone else, it's like, oh, that's like a minority, like, that doesn't happen,
Or maybe they need a gun, like something stupid. Like, what? No.
Just give them weapons. Give them a gun.
Number 7. In the article, Sterling urges us to move away from the focus on genitals. Why might this hyper-focus on genitals keep us stuck in old ways of thinking?
I don't know.
I think it kind of goes back to if we keep our mind on the fact that there is a penis and there is a vagina, it eliminates the fluidity of gender as a whole. Because sexuality and gender, it's like this line, and you can fall anywhere you want. But it's allowing that breakage and like ignoring the.
Something to box.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
It just kind of emphasizes the.
Yeah, because you can't. I mean, you can have. You are intersex, so you can have like both genitals, but that's like a minority. That you might be more fluid in your gender, and so, but it's like harder for like your organs to be fluid. You know what I mean? And so to just like focus on that, like you said, it's taking away like the idea that gender is fluid and like sex and gender are two different things. So that's like you said, that's putting people in boxes, which our society loves to do.
I can't elaborate on that.
They just were saying how we need to eliminate gender from like official documents and stuff. People have been saying forever. They went from sex to gender.
I was talking to my women gender studies professor, and apparently, like, once you go through surgery, like just changing your documents like takes years and years. And I'm like, why should you have to go through all that? And it would have been so like it's simpler if they're like, okay, well then we can shorten the process. No, just get rid of it.
Right. Well, I mean, I do understand why they have it. Only because, like, if you need to identify someone, how are you going to identify them? By putting one in a box that we all understand, you know? Because, like, that's the same thing with our monetary system. Why do we use the money we use? It's not backed by anything. We just use it. We just set the system for as it is. And I feel like that's what it is. I forgot where I was going with this.
But yeah, elaborating. Really, like, it helps, like, you know, when they do the census and stuff. Like, we like to know how many men and how many women we have. Like, there's benefits to it, but there should also, like on working forms and stuff, that can be very limiting. Because that doesn't, yeah, like,
I don't think, like, or like standardized tests, should I say, not like physical tests, you know?
Yeah.
Like standardized tests, like, you shouldn't have to put your race, because that shouldn't matter. You shouldn't have to put your sex, because that shouldn't matter. That puts you in a certain area that you may feel uncomfortable if you don't agree with what's on the paper.
Right. Right. And then, like, standardized testing, they're very biased anyway, so it's just, they suck.
They like scare you into failure.
Yeah, I was a Pacific Islander in the USGs. I was an Asian. Like, I was like, I don't understand. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm like South Asian, but you know, I'm just gonna put Pacific Islander because it's making you happy. And that would freak me. I have really bad anxiety, like test anxiety. So I'm like, which one do I bubble? And like my teacher's like Pacific Islander. I'm like, what is Pacific? Like, oh.
Yeah, I think that's the same experience people have when like they don't know what to mark off on their gender. But like I think we accept the race aspect. Like let's say if you're like, I'm Korean, right? So, but here I'm Asian. But like people who are Japanese are also Asian, but I'm not Japanese. And so we understand that, but we don't understand the gender aspect as much, or maybe we just choose not to understand it. But yeah, I mean, getting rid of it on like stuff like that would be easier. But I think like now it's just like counting things. Like we want to count everything. Yeah, statistically, like we want to count how many calories we eat, how many steps we take, and then like how many people. Right, and so I think that's just how our society is.
And then, you know, learning like sex ed in school, you learn, you know, this is
group from.
Yeah, and then even when you get together, like women, you don't learn about the vagina very much. You learn about this is the men, this is how the men's bodies work. But you don't. That's how I learned. That's how I learned. Yeah, that's different.
That's what they taught me. He was like, don't do
some
this.
people are like abstinence-only education.
What I was
just
taught.
don't have sex.
Well, yeah. Like, I think mine, they taught us more about the male than female, I guess because we're men. And I thought we would learn more about female later on in another sex ed class in a different grade, but we never did. So it's just like, okay.
Can you imagine, like, being, you know, intersex and, like, not knowing, like, where you should go and, like, what you should be learning and how you should, like, I can't imagine how confusing and, like, frustrating that could be.
No, I agree. I mean, that's too.
Do you guys have to watch the Giving Birth video? Yeah.
Oh, the guys experiencing it or whatever.
Oh, I've seen
like,
that one.
that's my favorite sex ed. It's not a lot about the vagina.
Really?
They're like, chlamydia happens here. Like, where, like, syphilis looks like. Yeah, they're like,
Yeah, I still don't even know what
Where did you go to school at? Is that?
here.
Okay, we have like 6 minutes. Okay, number 8. In this article, how did trans-identified persons challenge our conceptions of both sex and gender? Evaluate suggestions in the International Bill of Gender Rights, reasonable, possible, and possible. Yeah. It's on page 17 if you guys are like.
I mean, I feel like it's all what we've been through, basically. Like, how does trans-identified persons challenge our conceptions of both sex and gender? Well, how did they challenge the sex part aspect?
I mean, it goes back to the thing.
We can question the entire thing that we gender.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we said, well, we're supposed to do this and they're supposed to do that, but then you have a woman that wants to right into a male, and then it's like, oh my god.
And like the Bill of Gender Rights is basically saying that you like it lists gender rights, including the right to define one's own gender and like the right to change one's own gender. And so it includes like transgender people and that you can marry whoever you want. And like here, I'm like in some states, even if you do get married, there are laws where like if one like partner passes away, the other won't get like anything because it's not legal, and just so many stuff, and that's like basically goes against human rights, and we're saying these people aren't human beings, and that's really terrible, just because they don't fit into like the dichotomous.
And I also feel like the system that we live in is very controlling as to, like, because you said legally, if I were, I may not be legally married to somebody, but if I were married to another man, and I were to pass away, he wouldn't get anything because they don't view my
Marriage.
bond, as
Or
a,
even if you were married, you're just like living with that person, but you have like, you know, still there's no possible way
Yeah,
because
they
you're
just
not.
They just throw Delma on that one.
And I think sometimes you can't even like, if you're at a hospital, they can't come visit you.
Oh yeah.
There's so many little rules, and then like that's basic human rights that they're being denied.
and they're kind of hypocrites because they definitely said the separation of church and state, but the church and the state are almost like this right now, so they're not.
And then that's the state getting involved with your personal affairs, which is just kind of like,
Basically,
it's my relationship. You don't really need to know what's going on in my
So they do
relationship.
that federal stuff over your head, like, aha,
Yeah.
you thought you were gonna get away with it, but no.
Okay. Should we go to the next? Oh wait, it's going to the next one also. Okay, next article: theorizing difference from multiracial feminism. How does a multiracial feminist framework offer new theoretical directions to feminist thought?
I thought this article was interesting. Speaking of, well, kind of like ignoring that question for a second. I'm sorry. But this was written in 1996. And I think it's really interesting how modern feminism now kind of incorporates this into the activist part of things. We're trying to be all inclusive and take the views of everybody.
and I feel like that's a great thing to do because, like, just as we were sitting here right now, we learned a different perspective from an Indian culture, you know, like how they see it. So, I mean, obviously, if we were to put them all together, we'd probably learn something.
It's going to be a lot more beneficial than everybody.
Yeah.
Way more inclusive.
I think it's just the article said that multiracial feminism is basically when you understand that gender can be constructed within like race, class, like culture, and so like for example, like as an Asian American woman in the middle class, what I experience in my gender and just how I experience life is going to be different from how you experience life, and so you can't just say, okay, like, I'm going to be my own feminist person. You have to include everyone because everyone has different experiences. And it just makes you more culturally aware and makes you a better person in general. You know? Yeah, it makes you an open person.
Because all cultures have different gender roles and different ways that they view gender. And so it's, you can't understand one without understanding the other. Trying to morph it together to be like this really great, awesome thing.
Yeah. Like, and can't do that. And so, like, let's say someone goes over to India and starts cursing out transgender people.
They're gonna get crushed for life.
Right.
They're gonna
So,
get crushed right back.
Yeah, you know
your
what I'm saying?
culture, it's, like, against it, but, like, let's say in American culture, that's okay. But if you're not, like, you're not a part of multiracial feminism, then you don't understand that, and you're like, okay, it's totally okay, but they're like, you're cursed for life.
Yeah,
You're
it's
gonna get
almost like
flat
you're
tires
walking
for
with a
the
blind
rest
eye.
of your life. Like, you are going to get HIV. Like, it's just gonna get blessed on you. You know that. Like, you're gonna lose a child when you're like this age or something. I don't know.
Class about how transgender people have, it's like a one, I think it's 1 in 10, right?
1 in 10
chance of being
murdered.
Yeah.
in their lifetime, and like a regular person, it's 1 in 12,000.
That's like, okay, 1 in 10 is a statistic for gay people. 1 in 10 people are gay. So 1 in 10
1 in 10
trans people are
trans
going
people are going to get murdered in their lifetime.
Terrifying. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I honestly almost started crying in class.
Just
when I read that.
because of
so emotional. That's awful.
Yeah, just because you don't fit into some box that
Yeah.
society gives you.
It's awful. Okay. Same article. Gender studies used to be about white women. Now even the terms woman and man are problematic. Explain why these terms might be troubling for us.
Well, I was thinking about this earlier. I don't remember what we were talking about as you were walking, but I was like, yeah, men have the same idea. Like, but I don't remember what you're talking about, so this is kind of pointless right now. So I just remember, like, connecting, but on the other side, of the fence. I was like, oh, okay.
In our women's and genders class, we talked about how feminism started out as
It's been 35 minutes.
like because feminism started out with the white upper class women because they were the ones who could get changed done because they were closest to the men that were in power in the patriarchy. So it kind of started up there and then started to like drift down as the movement progressed and change did start happening. And I felt like that was one of the things.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. And just saying woman and man, that's two categories. You're excluding everyone else, which is why it's problematic.
Yeah.
I guess maybe because it'd be hard to try to change like the entire English language to be very inclusive because it didn't start out that way, and so you start introducing new terms to people, and people aren't catching on to them, or they're thinking, "Oh, that's just a pass." And so you're trying to change an entire part of our culture really quickly, and I can see how that's like it needs to happen. It obviously needs to happen, but it's very difficult to get done.
No, I agree because like as a gay man, like thinking about how they're so adamant about getting gay rights, I was like, yes, it's a great thing, but it doesn't need to happen so quickly because if you're gonna force it down other people's throats, it's not gonna go well. Like by them, it's going to be detrimental back on us again, basically.
Yeah, I think gradually trying to incorporate transgender people, not see transgender TV shows, talk shows, like that
I feel
was
like Orange is the New Black
that
is
was
a
just
big thing.
no,
That
that's what I was
show
talking about.
gives me life. Like, I have no life after July because I've been watching it one sitting, and there is like nothing in my life left to live for to July. Nothing.
I just thought that was his character. I never knew I never knew she was
Right.
in for her to come
yeah.
on TV as the man, and I'm like, I was just
I think that's why education is so important. Like, if we educate, like, our generation and, like, the younger generation, like, people who are old, they're not gonna, like, change their opinions, but they're, like, no offense, but they're gonna die. You know what I mean? So, it's like,
so is their opinion.
right.
Are you going to be here 2015?
Right. So it's like, let's be honest, like, people who matter are the ones who are going to grow up and be the ones to
They're the change.
create
Well,
change.
Right.
And so instead of, like, putting so much focus into, like stuffing, like, no, don't say woman, don't say man, start incorporating, like, other words and just getting people to be more inclusive.
And teaching those to the
Right.
like next generation so that it becomes it's like it's you're trying to normalize something that wasn't allowed to be normalized.
Yeah.
Which is I've seen transgender and more gay people on TV, and even having black women as lead roles in TV shows. Like you're trying to normalize this, so it's not like this random
Word.
Scandal, how to get away with it. Why?
And so it's like everything's trying to.
That is what gives me life between oranges and
Okay,
That is my bad.
only got to number 10, Dr. Honeycutt, but I think we did good. There's 15 questions, so we did really good.
We had a constant.
A lot of
We know
questions.
and
A lot.
Oh yeah, true.
Bye.